The battlefield had gone silent. Rescue ships swept across the burning horizon, collecting survivors and leaving the dead behind. Beneath shattered armor and drifting ash, an alien commander struggled to breathe. He watched his own fleet disappear into the clouds without him. Then came footsteps. Slow, deliberate, human. Every warning he'd ever heard echoed in his mind. Humans were reckless, unpredictable, dangerous. The figure knelt beside him, checked his wounds, and tightened a tourniquet with practiced hands. "You'll make it," the human said. The alien stared in disbelief. Why would an enemy stay, when everyone else had already walked away? In most corners of the galaxy, compassion had become a forgotten instinct. Wars had lasted so long that entire civilizations evolved around one brutal truth. Resources mattered more than lives. If a soldier fell behind, they were already counted among the dead. Rescue missions were considered wasteful. Mercy was seen as weakness. The wounded commander lying against the ruined stone knew that rule better than anyone. His people had conquered worlds by following it without hesitation. Yet the human beside him broke every law of survival he understood. Smoke drifted across the shattered battlefield as distant engines echoed overhead. The human adjusted the alien's bandages with steady hands, ignoring the danger closing in around them. "You need rest," the human muttered. The commander stared in disbelief. "You should leave me," he replied. "Your chances improve without me." The human didn't even look up. "That's not how we do things." For the first time in decades of war, the commander had no response. Then a warning pulse flashed across his damaged wrist display. His blood ran cold. Those weren't rescue signatures approaching through the atmosphere. They were execution teams. Only a handful of individuals in the galaxy warranted that level of pursuit. He was one of them. The human noticed the change immediately. "What is it?" The commander's voice dropped to a whisper. "If they find me, they won't stop until everyone near me is dead." The human glanced toward the burning horizon, then secured the final strap on the field stretcher. Then, the human said calmly, "We'd better keep moving." The commander couldn't understand it. The human knew the risk. He knew the odds. And somehow, he stayed anyway. The alien commander had survived 40 years of war. He had studied thousands of battle reports, memorized enemy doctrines, and predicted the collapse of entire civilizations with terrifying accuracy. But nothing in his training explained the human walking beside him. "You don't understand," the commander said as they moved through the ruins. "In every military force I've encountered, survival determines value. The wounded are liabilities." The human adjusted the strap of the field pack. "Back on Earth," he replied, "we call them family." The commander frowned. Family. The word felt strangely out of place on a battlefield. Hours passed as they crossed the shattered remains of what had once been a thriving colony. Burned vehicles littered the roads. Emergency beacons blinked weakly beneath collapsed structures. Then the human stopped. A distress signal. The commander's eyes widened. "We don't have time." The human was already moving. Under a pile of twisted metal, they found an injured soldier from another human unit. Without hesitation, the human pulled him free, stabilized his injuries, and carried on. The commander stared in disbelief. Exhaustion slowed them all. Enemy patrols were still searching. Yet the human refused to leave anyone behind. "Why?" the commander finally demanded. The human looked ahead as he answered. "Because someday it could be me lying there." Silence followed. For the first time in years, the commander found himself questioning the foundation of everything he believed. The galaxy called humans reckless. Perhaps they had misunderstood. Weeks before this battle, the commander had reviewed reports describing impossible human victories. Outnumbered defensive lines that refused to break. Rescue operations launched against direct orders. Units returning under enemy fire for a single missing soldier. At the time, he had dismissed those actions as emotional irrationality. Now he saw the truth. Humans fought differently because they lived differently. Fear wasn't their strongest motivator. Connection was. Every soldier advanced knowing someone would come back for them. Every medic treated lives as priceless. Every sacrifice strengthened the bonds holding them together. The commander felt an unfamiliar weight settle in his chest. Loyalty built through compassion. Trust forged through action. No empire had ever calculated the strategic value of hope. Suddenly, his damaged wrist display flickered to life. Encrypted coordinates appeared across the screen. Enemy troop movements. Extraction routes. Information capable of saving thousands. The commander closed his eyes. Sharing classified intelligence meant betraying everything he had sworn to protect. Yet the human beside him had already risked everything for a stranger. He made his decision. "There is another way through," he said quietly. The human glanced over. "You trust me now?" The commander looked toward the distant horizon where enemy dropships descended through the clouds. "No," he answered. Then, after a long pause, "I'm learning how." And above them, the first alarms began to sound. The first dropship broke through the clouds like a predator descending for the kill. Then another. And another. The alien commander stopped walking. His expression hardened as recognition flashed across his face. "They found us." The humans scanned the darkening sky. Red targeting beams swept across the ruined city blocks. "Can we outrun them?" The commander's answer came instantly. "No." They took shelter inside the shattered remains of a transit station as enemy troops deployed into the streets below. Heavy footsteps echoed through the rubble. Methodical. Relentless. The commander checked the charge remaining in his damaged sidearm. 3 shots. After decades of service, this was how it would end. "You should leave," he said quietly. "You still have a chance." The humans secured the barricade at the entrance. "Not interested." "You don't understand." "No," the human replied. "I understand perfectly." Outside, explosions shook the structure. The commander lowered his gaze. "My people abandoned me because I became a liability." The human glanced over. "Then your people made a mistake." A deafening crash interrupted them. Enemy forces had entered the building. The commander tightened his grip on the weapon. "Go!" Instead, the human activated a small emergency beacon attached to the chest plate of his armor. The commander stared. "What are you doing?" The human pressed the transmit button, calling for help. The commander's expression darkened. "No one will come." The human looked directly at him. "Humanity doesn't work that way." Minutes passed. The enemy closed in. Footsteps grew louder. Orders echoed through the corridors. Then, a voice crackled through the communicator. "We've got your signal. Hold your position." The commander froze. Another transmission followed. "Hang tight. We're inbound." Then another. And another. Dozens of responses flooded the channel. The human smiled. "Told you." The commander's pulse accelerated. They were coming back. Not because of strategic importance. Not because of military gain. Because one person needed help. The ceiling above them exploded inward. Human drop troops descended into the battle with controlled fury. The station erupted into chaos. Precision rifle fire. Medical teams rushing toward the wounded. Soldiers shielding civilians they had never met. Every action carried the same message. No one gets left behind. The commander watched in stunned silence. His entire worldview fractured before his eyes. Compassion wasn't making humans weaker. It made them unstoppable. Because fear isolated people. But loyalty united them. The battle surged through the station. Enemy lines collapsed beneath coordinated counterattacks. For the first time since the war began, the commander saw something greater than military discipline. He saw trust. Then everything changed. Enemy transmissions suddenly spread across the open channels. The commander's identity had been exposed. Human soldiers turned toward him. The wounded alien they had risked their lives to save wasn't an ordinary survivor. He was one of the highest-ranking commanders of the opposing alliance. Silence swept across the battlefield. Weapons lowered. Eyes narrowed. One decision could reignite the war. The commander stepped forward despite his injuries. He looked at the humans standing around him. The same humans who had rescued an enemy without hesitation. His voice carried across the ruined station. My people taught me that mercy is weakness. He paused. Today, humanity proved them wrong. The commander lowered his weapon onto the ground. If your species can risk everything to save someone like me. He looked toward the soldiers who had answered a single beacon call. Then perhaps this war doesn't have to define our future. No one spoke. The smoke settled. And for the first time in generations, the galaxy held its breath. Months after the battle on Kairos Prime, the story still refused to fade. It spread through military outposts, civilian colonies, and diplomatic chambers faster than any official report ever could. An enemy commander had been abandoned by his own fleet. A human had stayed. And somehow, that single decision had changed everything. No one understood how. At least, not at first. The Grand Assembly Hall stood at the center of neutral space, its towering chambers built to host the most powerful voices in the galaxy. For generations, its debates had ended the same way. Fear, threats, deadlock. This time felt different. Representatives from dozens of star systems filled the massive auditorium. Soldiers stood beside politicians. Former enemies occupied neighboring seats. At the center platform stood the alien commander. The same warrior who had once believed compassion was weakness. Scars from the battlefield still crossed his face. He didn't hide them. He wore them as proof. The chamber fell silent. I was taught, he began, that survival justified every sacrifice. His voice echoed through the hall. The wounded were burdens. Mercy endangered the collective. Attachment compromised efficiency. No one interrupted. Then I was left behind. Images appeared across the chamber screens. The ruined battlefield. The evacuation ships departing overhead. The lone human approaching through the smoke. I expected death. He paused. Instead, humanity arrived. Murmurs spread through the audience. Some had heard the rumors. Few believed them. The commander continued. The human who found me knew exactly who I was. A ripple of shock moved through the assembly. He understood the danger I represented. He understood the consequences of helping me. The commander's gaze swept across the crowd. He helped me anyway. Elsewhere in the chamber, human delegates remained silent. They had not requested recognition. To them, the rescue had simply been the right thing to do. The commander drew a slow breath. I spent my entire life studying warfare. The battlefield footage shifted. Human rescue teams carrying wounded civilians. Soldiers shielding strangers. Medics treating both friend and foe. I searched for the source of humanity's strength. The commander's voice deepened. I assumed it was technological innovation. Another image appeared. Human troops returning under fire. I assumed it was tactical adaptability. Then another. Families reuniting with returning service members. It was neither. The chamber stood motionless. Their strength comes from refusing to abandon one another. Silence followed, because everyone present understood the implications. Entire empires had been built on fear. Human civilization had built something else. Trust. The commander stepped away from the podium. I came here prepared to negotiate ceasefires. He stopped. Instead, I proposed transformation. Confused whispers spread immediately. Transformation? What do you mean? One representative demanded. The commander turned toward the assembly. Every military alliance represented here must establish recovery protocols prioritizing the retrieval of wounded personnel. Another representative rose. That would require enormous resources. The commander nodded. It would. He looked toward the human delegation. And yet humanity has demonstrated that investment strengthens societies rather than weakening them. The room erupted into argument. It was impossible. Too costly. Too idealistic. The commander listened patiently. Then he raised one hand. How many wars began because one side stopped seeing the other as people? Silence answered him. How many conflicts continued because hatred proved more convenient than understanding? No one responded, because everyone knew the truth. He looked toward the humans once more. One individual chose compassion over practicality. His expression softened. That choice altered the future of worlds. The debate lasted hours, then days. Resistance remained fierce, but something had changed. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy wasn't arguing about how to win wars. It was asking how to prevent them. Years passed. The battlefield on Kairos Prime transformed into protected memorial grounds. Grass reclaimed the scarred earth. New trees stood where artillery batteries had once burned. Visitors traveled from distant systems to witness the monument erected there. At its base stood two figures. A wounded alien, a human reaching down to help him stand. Children often asked guides what made the monument important. The answers varied. Some spoke of diplomacy. Others described sacrifice. Veterans tended to say the same thing. It reminded the galaxy what strength actually looks like. One quiet afternoon, the former commander returned alone. Age had slowed his movements, but not his purpose. He stood before the inscription carved into polished stone. When everyone else walked away, one human stayed. Because no one should face the darkness alone. The commander closed his eyes. He remembered smoke-filled skies. He remembered expecting death. Most of all, he remembered hearing those impossible words. "You'll make it." Footsteps approached behind him. A young visitor hesitated nearby. "Were you really there?" the child asked. The commander opened his eyes. "Yes." The child glanced toward the monument. "Why did the human help you?" The commander considered the question carefully. Because the answer had reshaped his life. Because humans understand something many civilizations forget. The child waited. The commander looked toward the stars overhead. "Compassion is not surrender." His voice remained steady. "It is courage." He turned toward the child. Choosing kindness when cruelty is easier requires extraordinary strength. The child smiled. Then asked the question every generation eventually asks. Did that one choice really change the galaxy? The commander looked back toward the monument. He thought of the treaties signed, the rescue protocols adopted, the lives preserved, the wars prevented. Finally, he nodded. Yes. His gaze lifted toward the endless horizon beyond Kairos Prime. The galaxy prepared itself for humanity's weapons. A small smile crossed his face. But it was humanity's heart that changed the stars forever. And somewhere beyond known space, another distress beacon activated in the dark. Another impossible choice waited to be made. Another story had already begun.